stepping into uniform for the first time, stepping on the set for the first time. Why don't you tell everybody what that was like? Because I'm sure we would all love to have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, my first time was I'd gone in for a fitting, and the people in the office said, you know, the artistic director the art director would like to show you around if you were interested. And so she showed me around to all the sets, and I mean, it was like, it's like 7 sound stages. It's huge. I was immediately lost. And then the bridge set was
Disco or Enterprise?
Disco, and there were sheets up over all the chairs. She said, "Would you like to sit on your chair?" I was like, "Yeah." So, you know, I pulled our sheet off the chair and I sat down, and it was surprisingly emotional. Because suddenly it was like whiplash. I realized that this was my make-believe game when I was a kid, and now I'm still doing this. And it was weird.
But awesome. Weird but awesome.
Really awesome, but just, wow, me, you know?
With like $10 million supporting your imagination.
Yeah.
140 million? Something crazy.
I got a whiff of the per episode, and we're not supposed to divulge those things, but it's one of the most expensive shows produced on television.
Oops. Yeah, it's interesting for me because Anson starts out in the Enterprise uniform, and then you wore disco for most of the season.
Yeah.
And I don't put my uniform on until the very, very end. And so it's a little bit of a different journey for me. In a way, it felt like I had gone through all of this, not just hardship as Ethan stepping into the role of Spock, this iconic character with all this expectation that filled me with dread and terror. It felt like it was earned by the end, so it was a really moving, beautiful experience for me.
You also have that transition where you shave.
Yeah, which was a part of it. It felt like not just
Baby face.
what?
Baby face.
You couldn't believe it when I walked out. You were like,
That's
"What?"
great. It looks
I walked out with. We did a hair and makeup test. I had one final day with the beard, and then a day off where we did a hair and makeup test with Final Spock, I called him. And I was walking around set with the bangs and the clean face and everything, and people didn't recognize me. They were like looking.
Who's that?
Yeah, like double taking. I'd be like, "Hey," and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" Like that's crazy. So it was like it was
You were all in the black for most of it, right? Like all in the dark clothes,
Yeah.
not like a civilian.
Yeah, leather coats, the Vulcan chic. Yeah.
So, Anson, you've been in a very immersive environment on set with Hell on Wheels, and now you both are on this immersive environment with the sets of Discovery, the feel that you're on the starship. How does that assist you in getting into character, getting into the vibe? I'm sure it's a lot more helpful than just being, like filming on a street corner or filming someplace a little bit more normal, a little bit more run of the mill.
I honestly don't think that you can build anything that is more enveloping than that street corner you just named. I remember the first movie I did was a movie called Tully I did in the late 90s, and it was set in the cornfields in Nebraska. Little independent production, we had no studio, we were literally shooting in the cornfields of Nebraska, and I'd done just theater my whole life. And I can remember being out there and the camera rolling and doing the scene for the first time and then being like, my God, like, this is my set. That's one of the things that film gives us as actors is the ability to go and tell stories in these real locations where you're getting the wind in your hair, you're getting the real people on the street, you're getting the sky and what the weather throws at you. And unfortunately, sometimes it's necessary, especially with a thing like Star Trek, it's necessary. But I think we overuse the soundstage because we've gotten to a place where we're trying to control every element of a chaotic medium. And I think all art should have some element of chaos in it.
I always think about what Leonardo DiCaprio said when he was filming The Revenant, about how everything was outside and how they had to search for snow, and he had to struggle with the weather so much.
That was our crew.
Yeah, and but like having done Hell on Wheels and having to deal with the outside and always being kind of like dirty and into it and all that, that feeling of that kind of a set versus the soundstage environment. Like, do you like the outside?
I like being outside.
The outside one.
Yeah. For all the difficulties and all the discomforts that it brings, it's just a better set.
Did you ever film on location? Did you ever film? You did, right? Off the sound stages for Trek.
For Trek. At University of Toronto for the episode where.
Oh yeah.
For the Time Crystal. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I only went off once for the Talos episode when we went down to Talos, and we filmed in this rock quarry north of Toronto, but it was like 115 degrees. It was horrible, and we're all wearing like black leather and wearing prosthetics, and so in those situations it's like not super awesome. But I filmed a TV show called 10 Things I Hate About You years and years ago, where they reconstructed the schools inside of a soundstage. Which
why?
I know. So for that,
it's LA. You've got a million closed schools.
I don't know why. So for that, it was not ideal. But like on Trek, we are on a spaceship. You walk into the soundstage onto these incredible masterpieces of sets, and you really feel like you are in a spaceship. So I thought it was really wonderful for that.
I personally, having visited the set for Ticonderoga and then coming out and being in the halls of the Enterprise.
That was wild. Yeah.
That's very cool.
And what I was surprised by is, first of all, I didn't realize it was the entire set.
Yeah.
But then I didn't expect that they would get the lighting so perfect, and then the background sound effects they pump in.
And then the hum of the starship. You can actually download, how they have like a loop of sounds. You can have a loop of the noise like playing in your office that you're on the ship.
You've done that, haven't you?
I have not. but I've had friends that have been like, oh, here it is, download it. You feel like you're immersed in this environment. It's all everything part of being the immersion. And as people who do this at recreations, or you can take a picture on the bridge when you're in Circuit Las Vegas, or wherever, or like it's just even like taking a picture on the Iron Throne, for Game of Thrones fans. It's just that little tiny element that like brings you into it.
Yeah.
Did you guys, speaking of those little tiny elements, did you guys either take something to remember your characters by, or steal something and steal it, or were you given anything as a memento?
Every production is different. Their Trek has to be a little bit careful with those things because so much is going into archives. And also, they don't want things ending up out there in the wrong hands. But I props. My high school asked me for something because they were building, some sort of case, and props made like a little desk plaque with the Star Trek badge and a picture of me and Captain Christopher Pike, USS NCC2. It came out so well, I was like, could you make one for me? So I got that. But the uniforms are locked down. Those don't get out.
I have the first leather jacket that I wore, my first episode.
What?
One.
I got my pants. I got my pants from episode 2.
Pants? Jason Isaacs just straight up stole his jacket. He's like, I'm taking this. I have the jacket, and I have some pairs of ears.
Oh, good.
I've actually.
You frame them?
I haven't yet, but yeah, I'll do. Actually, for Christmas, because I got back, we finished filming at the end of December, right before Christmas. And I got, half a dozen ears or something, which is so weird. And for Christmas, I gave an ear to my mom, my dad, and my sister. And they were like really pumped, and it's just the weirdest gift to give. There's some dead flesh.
So you mentioned a little bit how you had a theater background, and you did theater before you came on to, or did you just go straight to filming?
Just went to filming. I've never really done a play, actually.
Oh, Interesting. Okay, so is there anything you'd like to do? Shakespeare, maybe classical American theater, something different? Do you find that that's maybe not your medium, or you think you'd like to try it out?
I have like this Pavlovian response to being in a live theater where I fall asleep. I think from being a kid and being brought to things that I hated. So I kind of, I'm gonna go to actor hell for saying this, but I kind of hate theater. This conditioning that I've
You
developed.
did grow up in LA.
And I also grew up in LA, that's true. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would do if I did a stage play.
Anson, help me out.
You'd be great in Hinge or Tennessee Williams. You should do some Tennessee Williams. Yeah.
I almost got cast in a Broadway production.
Brick. You'd be a great Brick.
Yes.
Who?
Yeah.
Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
That was what Nimoy did after filming the original
Did he?
series. He did a big tour of it. He had like a huge awakening as an
That's
actor.
wild.
That is weird.
There's a Leonard Nimoy theater in New York that I've been to that I've seen the selected shorts. So you should check it out next time you're in town. But how about Anson? How about you? Any roles you'd like to tackle? Whether it's, I know so many Trek actors.
Yeah, I mean, I almost did Night of the Iguana a couple of years ago with James Earl Jones and Amanda Plummer. And me and the producer couldn't quite come to terms on how much he would pay me when he replaced me when we moved to Broadway. And these things like called an out clause, that if they move the play to Broadway, they retain the right to replace you for a fee. They have to pay you a fee. And I was like, if we're really getting into we're disagreeing about a few $1,000s about, you in this fictitious future will replace me. This doesn't bode well. And so that didn't happen. But I'm not sure the production happened. But anyways, I'd still really love. Hello. And I think it's time to play Astroff. And go on.
Yeah. I've had the great fortune to see Patrick Stewart doing Macbeth, Avery Brooks doing King Lear, Kate Mulgrew doing Anthony and Cleopatra. So is there any Shakespeare that you felt maybe you'd like to try your hand?
Yeah, I mean,
it's not for every actor, so I'm just curious. But you're now steeped in a
I mean,
strong captain tradition.
the Jacobean play I really want to do is not Shakespeare. It's called The Changeling by Thomas More.
Yes.
But the first time I met Patrick Stewart actually he was doing Prospero and The Tempest on Broadway, and we had an old friend of his was sort of like my family fairy godmother. She was a professor emeritus at Vanderbilt. She's the only American scholar ever to serve on the Stratford Committee. They went back to the RSC days. And so she came to New York my first year in graduate school and took me to see him playing Prospero on Broadway, and then we went out to dinner afterwards, and I was completely starstruck. I'm sitting in the back of the car on the way to dinner next to Patrick Stewart. I do not know what to do. And I remember her saying to Patrick, so what's next? He said, and I remember he was riding in the car like this with the windows right, lighting like this all the time to sort of shield his face because he was at the height of his fame. And he said, and I really think I want to do Macbeth twice. Once to fuck it up. And then again to get it right. And I was like, oh, I see, that's commitment.
That's a level we're operating at.
Yeah.
We should do Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd do that with you.
That would be
So going off of, going from great theater, going to the great writing that we've experienced on Discovery this season, I had a couple lines. First of all, I'm wearing this bracelet. It says, "You are a Starfleet captain," and then it says, "Service, sacrifice, compassion, and love." Your line from right after you saw the vision of your future. So I wanted to hear a little bit about how you prepared for that scene, because that's like a super emotional, pivotal Pike moment.
that was one of those scenes that if I've learned one thing as an actor, the thing I've learned most, I think, is that there is a muse, and you get better about listening to the little voice, because it will deliver answers to things if you're listening, even if those answers initially sound crazy. And I just remember knowing that the scene, I can't remember really the details so the scene initially was very, the dialogue was very expositionary. And I was like, this can't be a scene about explaining. It has to be active. There has to be something I'm doing. And I remember initially figuring out what that was, and it was, being scared out of my wits and then grabbing onto this very thin rope of core value, which is attached to Starfleet Code of Conduct. And I remember going back and forth with Alex and Melissa many times, and then eventually finding it. And the service sacrifice part of it kind of came out of me. And but what was really the struggle was finding how to do the flash forward, particularly the scene in the hallway with old Pike, because initially it was written just from the point of view of current Pike, and I was like, well, then this begs the question: am I really seeing? Okay, because it says in the scene they see each other. So what's happening for old Pike? It can't just be a scene about current Pike. It has to be a scene about older Pike. And so the director and I ended up going back and looking at the last scene in 2001: A Space Odyssey, when the pilot, I forget his name, encounters his older self encounters his younger self. So that film language that was used in that scene, especially when you see him stop and close up and senses that something's behind him, and then turns into that. That's from that scene.
It was really powerful, I think. Just seeing it the first time.
Thank you.
I think the first line that really made me love Pike in an unexpected way was when he said, "If you tell me we're going to skip across the universe on a highway made of mushrooms, I'm going to have to go on faith." And just that, right before you made that first forward jump, and I was like, yes, that's what's happening. We're skipping across the universe on mushrooms. You don't think about it until it's phrased like that, but
That's
the
good
delivery
writing.
on that was just
That's
great writing, great delivery.
no acting required on that one.
So Ethan, I wanted to talk a little bit. So we have this great emotional Pike moment, and then I know one of the emotional moments of Spock that resonated for a lot of viewers was that Spock, we find out he has a learning disability. And you say failure is liberating. And I think that is a really great quote coming from, seeing how where you were before we got to who Leonard was as Spock. That idea that you can fail but still be an amazing character and an amazing person that so many fans for 50-something years have identified with. So you want to talk a little bit about that, imbuing Spock with that new information?
With failure. Yeah, that was during the chess scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what is that line? God, a lot of the words have escaped me. I remember the emotion and the terror of worried about being fired. Yeah, well, that was actually a huge lesson for me. Throughout my life, I've been such a perfectionist. And I think a healthy dose of perfectionism is good and pushes you to do things that are beyond your capability, which is how we grow. But you really need to accept that you will fail completely. And Spock is this, he's so taut, he's like this, all this potential energy wound up and ready to pop, I think, at any moment, which makes him so compelling, right? He's constantly suppressing his emotion, because I think he feels deeply. My Spock does. Yeah, I think throughout his life, prior to coming aboard Discovery in the second season, he has had to contain this part of himself that is imperfect, right, on Vulcan. That's a failure. He's always been, the half-breed freak, or whatever Michael calls him in that scene. And I think to accept that, he as a being, as a hybrid, is a failure on his planet, allows him to become something more than he ever knew that he was. And again, that's what makes him special. He has such profound perspective on humanity, because there is an alien within himself, watching us. And I think that's why he makes such compelling and poignant observations. And I don't think he would be able to do that if he didn't sort of accept and live beyond his failure as an entity or as a being. That's a little abstract, but I hope you guys understood that.
How much did you watch to prepare?
I watched the first season. Well, first of all, I had to catch up on Discovery. I was still finishing the first season when I was cast. And then I read all the scripts leading up to my episode, and was reading I Am Not Spock. I was reading a book called The Order of Time, which is a book on theoretical physics that I thought was important for Spock. But I probably watched through episode 32 or something. And by then I felt so deep into my preparation that it felt like very alive, and I didn't want to risk mimicking it anymore, because that was never the intention, really to take in and internalize what I thought Spock was.
It's interesting to see the evolution of what Leonard gave us versus what you're bringing versus what Zachary Quinto did with the Kelvin timeline, and just comparing these great performances over the course of how layered this one character can be, and how the bringing the writing and bringing your interactions with Michael as a foil to that, and also having this sibling relationship. I'm adopted, and it was interesting to see that Michael, the show, coming from a point of view of an adopted person, and then having to deal with Spock as his brother, and then dealing with discussing her brother with Pike, and how that family dynamic played out, and even played out within the structure of Starfleet. And what was your thoughts on the sibling vibe that you guys were trying to portray? And was there a lot of discussion? Is there a lot of you and Sonequa having a bonding moment there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Sonequa was a really special person and actor, and she just, the first time I met her, she ran across the parking lot and hugged me and said, "I've been waiting for you," because she'd seen my tapes. Yeah, she's really, I'm sure some of you have met her. She's so warm and loving. And I have an older sister, so I didn't need to stretch my imagination that far to understand what that's like. And we just there was just an implicit trust between her and I, to dive into the sibling relationship, to, I think, the great admiration that these characters have for one another, but didn't want to admit, right, that they are stronger together.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful message. And
there's some great ribbing too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And there was one take when she comes back alive after we've sacrificed her to the Red Angel to capture her, and I say some line you cracked up during the take, and I was like, "This is working. This is cool." So to go back to what you're saying about the, Zachary and Leonard and I all playing this character, I think I kind of lucked out because I got to play this amazing arc for this amazing character. I feel just supremely lucky.
And Anson, how about you? How about the kind of like mentor to Michael Merham, and then the vibe that you're like the second captain, kind of, or the third technically with Jojo, and then Lorca, and then the succession of that. How did you approach playing that, and what were your feelings on kind of maintaining, you're maintaining the order of the ship essentially, setting the tone, as it were.
Well, I mean, I think I said yesterday, the only thing I really knew, I only knew a couple of things about Pike. I knew that he probably had good parents and definitely had good mentors. And I knew that he was Gene Roddenberry's original vision of what a Starfleet captain should be. So he should embody Starfleet code of conduct, Starfleet ideals. In terms of the relationship with Burnham, I only knew that within the first day, I realized that she is captain material, no doubt. And also, I'm the new kid, and I think the other thing that I figured out is that the Captain Pike is smart enough to realize that his greatest resource and his greatest tool is his crew, which is what makes him able to say to the bridge, "I'm lost. You got any ideas?" Which I think is a superpower of a kind and makes for great bridge scenes. But also it allows him to go to Burnham and say, "Okay, you know this crew better than I do, and we need to trust each other." And so I think in a way it was a give and take. I think she was as much a mentor to him as he was to her. I think he learned a lot from Burnham. I think that her gut is probably better than his. She has tremendous heart. My goodbye to Sneeko actually I wrote a letter from Captain Christopher Pike to Commander Burnham. And left it in her dressing room, saying, I write this to you not with the paternalistic assumption that you will one day make a great captain, but with the firm conviction that you already are.
I was saying to both of them earlier that this crew, these actors, are such great ambassadors for the Star Trek franchise. And the enthusiasm that everyone has brought to their roles and brought to the fandom. And I feel like we all really appreciate that, and feeling the embodiment of these awesome ideals that we've been talking about up here. It's been a little more of a serious discussion, but I think it's really indicative of how you guys have immersed yourself in the world and coming into the family like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just having lunch with Anson, and I was like, "Can you fucking believe this?" He's probably sick of hearing it by now, but every once in a while I'm just like, "Dude, this is nuts."
This is life.
But yeah, I as an actor, you hope to participate and be a part of works that change the world for the better, and I think there's no project, no IP, intellectual property out there that really promotes a caring and loving and unified and hopeful and curious world, and it's just I couldn't wish to be a part of a better crew.
Now, Anson has a podcast called The Well, where we talk about creativity and where that springs from. And if you want to share a little bit about that with everybody and talk
Yeah, you
about
probably all got a card by now. I had this crazy idea many years ago that I wanted to do some sort of interview show. I didn't even know what medium at the time. That instead of asking the guests all the same 5 questions we've heard a million times, ask them about that thing that we didn't know that they do for them. And then my best friend and I decided to do this, but because we were interested in people other than celebrities, we wanted to sort of expand that into kind of like where people go for their creative juice or how people think outside the box. So it's kind of a radio lab for creativity. And we come at it from as many different angles as possible. We've got marine archaeologists, obviously actors, singers. We've got a very famous football coach, a biologist, the guy who started messaging extraterrestrial intelligence. We got Alice Cooper talking about golf. It's a good one.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's endless possibilities, really.
Yeah, and it's just been my creative outlet. So when I finish a piece of work, I don't have to ask what I'm going to do next. I have sound editing.
Great. We're going to take audience questions, so why don't you guys start to line up? There's a mic right in the middle. And I'm going to ask everyone to keep it to one question, if possible. And we're just going to try to get to as many people as possible. So keep it succinct and awesome. You're first. Go ahead.
Thanks. This is for Anson. I think it was Frank Bowman, the guy in 2001. Bowman was his name. But anyway, no, David Bowman. Anyway, I was wondering if you had also watched that movie or if it was very influential for you before you had to watch it in connection with Star Trek. Like, was it an early favorite or?
2001?
Yeah, 2001.
I think it's one of the greatest films ever made.
Can you elaborate at all?
That movie, it really, it's held up. I think that movie is a technical achievement, but I also can't think of a film about a bigger subject. He just kind of, Kubrick is, he's a filmmaker with big ideas, and he didn't see any limitations.
Thank you.
My question is for Anson. Captain Pike was the role model for non-toxic masculinity that I think the world needs in 2019.
That was absolutely on my list of questions. So good job. He's not a plant, I promise.
When you developed the character, did you have a thought of him as a role model, or was it just, could you talk about that?
No. I don't think role models think of themselves as role models. I think he's very aware that he must lead by example. And that, that service, sacrifice, and love, that's a very important part of that version of faith, hope, and love. And I think that he understands that the heart is not a vulnerability, but strength.
That's a great quote. The heart is not a vulnerability, but strength.
Yeah. And it's, I'm in a place in my life where also I'm having to become responsible for pretty much everyone in my life. And the way that I've gotten through it, and I can't even remember where I heard this phrase, but what's gotten me through is my mantra at this time in my life is that it is not a man's burden, it is a man's privilege.
Thank you.
Everyone have a lot of history. Anson, did you and Rebecca Romaine have a chance to get together and kind of talk about that as far as what their history might have been or what their...
I'm sorry, can you go back? I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Oh, number one.
Okay.
And Captain Pike have a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
Did you and Rebecca get to flesh that out yourselves and give yourselves a little bit of backstory?
There was a discussion between Rebecca, myself, and the writers, as well as Alex, about what that was and how that fit into Starfleet protocol of the time. and how to think about that in ways that are free from our current moralistic or moralizing or our current workplace structures. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. My question concerns playing a character who's in a dark place. Wondering the emotional toll it can take, how you deal with, for example, playing Cullen Bohannon for a number of years. And Spock was clearly in a dark place when he started on Discovery. So I'm just wondering how each of you would deal with that kind of situation.
So you're asking, in what ways do the character affect the actor?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's a great question. I felt like it takes time. Like, so my goal is to be so filled with thoughts and feelings of the character that you can't see me on screen. That's ultimately my goal, which I hope to continue to improve on throughout my life, throughout my career. And it does take time for those thoughts to fade out, those feelings to fade out. Day to day or week to week. When I came back, I mean, Discovery is kind of a dark show. We're dealing with, all of sentient life in the galaxy coming to an end, and so I mean, I feel even now I'm still sort of decompressing from it all because it was such an intense experience. But yeah, there were like Saturday mornings we would wrap at like 5 in the morning when I would come home and just be like, oh man, like I am just full of lead. I feel so heavy, and you just do your best to walk it off and then dive back into it on a Monday. But yeah, it does become kind of expensive, in my opinion.
Does it have, you have like something you watch, something you read, something you do to kind of decompress, a fun thing, a hobby?
Yeah, well, at the beginning I had to do so much research, so I was like really stressed about like finishing these books. But video games really kind of take me out of it.
What are your favorites?
I like SNES, Super Nintendo. And so I sort of tend towards classics.
Yeah.
I would just say pretty much the same. I think that the only real drag is it's a question of energy. And so if I have something where I know that I'm going to need to be sobbing, I try to get them to put that at the end of the day for no other reason than energy. But in terms of like your own psyche being fractured because of a character playing, it's bullshit. When you hear actors saying that they were disturbed, they came away with mental issues, they probably haven't to begin with. Okay? Especially if they think that there's some sort of fucking shaman. So, what's that?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
I don't think Daniel Day-Lewis is suffering from any. I've never heard him talk about mental issues or having.
I always think of Heath Ledger.
I think that he's probably a very practical actor. I'm a very practical actor, I did this movie one time called Cook County where I played an East Texas meth dealer in a family of meth addicts. Very dark movie. And I just kept getting these questions like, is it hard? Did it take a toll on you? I'm like, it's called a play for a reason. It's not called an emote.
You clearly have two different approaches.
No, I think he's pretty practical.
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question.
Hi, this is for both of you. I just want to hear the beginning of your stories as far as the show goes. Your audition process, how you got the roles, and how you were both notified that you were selected for this opportunity, this outstanding, great thing that we have here. So I heard this from other actors, and I just want to hear your stories of this, how it all came to be in the beginning.
His story is better. Now you told the story yesterday, but you got to tell
Okay,
the part of it that I like so much.
Oh yeah, I forgot to put that in yesterday. So yeah, I'll try to distill it a little bit. So I sent in a tape. I got called in. I didn't know what role it was for. I knew it was for Star Trek. I went in for the showrunners. I knew I'd have another audition. They sent me a new scene that they wrote specifically for the audition because they give us dummy sides, right? Because everything's so confidential. And I went in, and about 2 days before the audition, I discovered it was for Spock because the new scenes that I got revealed that. And I like blacked out for my final audition. I was just like so terrified. And I read for Alex Kurtzman, who was the new showrunner. And that night I was having sushi with a buddy of mine, and I was like, man, like something really special happened today. I think I'm going to be a part of something really special. And I got a call from my manager, and he's like, Ethan, we have an issue with Star Trek. And I was like, oh, shit, what? And he's like, the camera didn't pick up your voice in the audition. And I was like, are you kidding me?
You didn't think he was messing with you?
I thought he was screwing with me because he's done this before, and I was like, are you serious? And he was like, he's been like, you didn't get it. No, just kidding, you got it. And so yeah, I thought he was screwing with me. And so I had to go back in the next day and do it again. And I half thought that it was like they just wanted to make sure I could really do it, like really, really do it. So I had to go in the next day and do it again, and I was like, I hope that, you know, the nerves weren't there, which sometimes nerves are a good thing because they push you into uncomfortable places, which then, you know, lends spontaneity to an audition. And then the next day, I was out walking, and I got a text message from the casting director that said, "Welcome aboard, Mr. Spock." And I was just like, totally for it. What was yours?
Mine's not as exciting. I'd actually been talking to them the year previous about Lorca, and they wisely cast Jason. But then they called me about the new captain in season 2, named Captain Parker. And I thought, well, that's a boring name for a captain. And they said, would you mind putting yourself on tape? And I was like, of course. So I had my wife put me on tape. And then sent it in. The next day they called and said, you got it. And one of my representatives said, you got it. And they said, oh, by the way, it's not Captain Parker, it's Captain Pike. And I didn't know if I was going to vomit or...
You have to go in and test. They cast it off the tape.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Because he's a big shot. Correct.
Next question.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could,
Say one of yours.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about working with Mary Wiseman, if you have any funny anecdotes, or I think Anson Tilly is kind of a fan favorite, of course you are as well, but I'd love to hear just anything about working with her.
I'm on the Tilly fan club too, so I don't know this answer.
I think Mary Wiseman is a singular talent. She has obviously an incredibly strong imagination and precociousness as an actor, but she has a gutsiness about her choices and a maturity that belies her young age. She's a fully formed woman and a fully formed actor who knows exactly what she wants to do with this role, and she is the farthest thing from it. She, you know, there's a facet of her that is still connected to that awkward 13-year-old, you know, and she's able to bring that out, and she walks that tightrope of really rigorous work that she can then have fun with at the same time, and I love her, and I love working with her.
Yeah, when I first saw the show, I mean, I was just struck by her incredible acting ability and talent. I mean, she's so good. she actually has a pretty cool casting story as well. She was cast also directly off of tape out of Juilliard. So she just finished grad school, I believe. And they saw her and they were like, yep, that's her. Because she's just so beautifully and brilliantly Tilly. I just have memories of her being hilarious on set. So she and Shahzad are like best pals. And they, you know, I was also the new guy. And so came into all these other wonderful relationships that had already been formed. And they would just have like great back and forth. And there's a scene when she's talking about Princess Wana Hana Kana, whatever. Can you do it?
Man,
Oh, yeah. Anyways, and so she had to, the first time she's like, oh, like I know Princess whatever. And we had to do it a bunch of times because it's like really hard to get out of your mouth. And, I don't know, it's just like a joy to be around her when she's being silly and being silly and having fun.
Thank you so much.
Hello. So, by the way, first of all, Mr. Peck, you should lead a Nintendo video game competition on the Star Trek cruise. You should host like a video game competition or something on the
This
cruise.
is a great idea.
Yeah. But okay, my question. In the spirit of kind of creativity and asking questions that you may not always be asked, if you could have a conversation with any person that someone you've always wanted to meet, even if they've long passed, you know, who's someone you've always wanted to meet and talk to?
For me, that's a great question. I mean, Leonard Nimoy pops to mind right away because you know, some people have been asking me if I've met him. But maybe Kurt Vonnegut. He just seemed like such a fantastic mind, and seemed to have a really healthy understanding of life and existence that I wish I could extract. How about you?
We had this conversation on my podcast recently, and my first thought is probably not what I would go with is Bob Dylan, because I don't think he would be a very good conversationalist. It's such a hard question. My producing partner, he said Leonardo da Vinci, which I thought was a good choice. I don't know. Can I get back to you on that?
What about Faulkner?
Oh, he's an asshole. No, he was a horrible human being. Great writer.
Still interesting.
Terrible human being. It makes me think of that movie, Field of Dreams. He's talking to his dad, or he's saying, yeah, we're all getting together. Ty Cobb's pissed off because we didn't invite him. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a better answer.
That's okay. That was good. Thank you.
I think we have time for 2 more.
Hi, my name is Laura. Welcome to Shore Leave. I guess would have been the original Pike actor Gary Lockwood.
I'm sorry?
Gary Lockwood.
I didn't.
He didn't play Pike.
Jeff Hunter, sorry.
Okay.
I have one question for Ethan, one question for you, and one question for both of you.
Okay.
Ethan, if there was a... Sorry, this was go to Ethan. If you could reprise any of your grandfather's roles, i.e. Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird, which one would you choose?
I wouldn't do any of them. I don't need to mess with that, you know. But it would be fun. It would be fun to have been him in Spellbound. I would never remake it, but just to be there and do it, be a part of that would be phenomenal. That's one of my favorite movies of his.
Awesome. Okay, last question.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, this one is for Anson. You probably have a good guess what I'm going to ask you about. So, you've done television, movies, theater, but you've also been in video games, including one of my favorite ones, The Evil Within, which is great. You guys should all check it out.
It's terribly frightening.
It is. It's amazing, though. But I was wondering, like, what was the process for you getting the role of Sebastian Castellanos? And well, yeah, I guess that's just my question.
They just called, the creator, Shinji, he had seen Hell on Wheels, and he thought I could do the voice of Sebastian Castellanos. And I was like, yeah, I love video games, so I want to do it. The process was interesting. At first I didn't understand why the other actors weren't in the booth with me. But the funny part was towards the end, after you've done all of the lines that they need for all of the cutscenes and the stock phrases like "out of ammo," there's like a half a day where they do what are called efforts. And like, okay, I'm just gonna read, and the director's like, okay, I'm just gonna read things out to you. You just give me the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, you ready? And you're walking. Great. Okay, you are jogging. Great. Running. Great. Okay, you're jumping over a rock. Jumping over a low fence. Jumping over a high fence. I will spare you the scream session.
Thank you. So before you guys head out, we have a little something for you. I have your mic right here.
Thank you again, you guys, for being here at Shore Leave. Shore Leave has a gift for you. Shore Leave convention began 41 years ago. This is the 41st convention. And it was named after the Star Trek original series episode, Shore Leave. In that episode, the White Bunny from Alice in Wonderland appears. So we'd like to present you guys with your own Shore Leave bunny.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys so much. You've been great hosts. Thank you for having us in your home.
Hold up the bunnies.
Ha ha ha!